Hello and welcome to Ask an Author with Julia Kelly. I'm very excited this week because I'm joined by not one, but two wonderful guests who will be talking about their brand new co-written historical fiction novel, Hazel Gaynor and Heather Webb. Welcome. I think we all have
Hello.
copies here.
Yes. That was well prepared.
I know. I actually have a copy I can show off. Well,
What
perhaps
professionals.
exactly. Perhaps we can do a bit of a round robin with introductions here, and then we can talk a little bit about the book as well. So, Hazel, do you want to introduce yourself?
I will. Hello, everybody. I'm Hazel Gaynor. I'm in Ireland, and I am a New York Times and USA Today bestselling. I'm just showing off now. Author of, I think now it's nearly 10 historical novels, three of which I have co-written with this amazing lady, Heather Webb. And we have had just such a great time having this dual writing relationship. And we are excited to tell you all about our latest collaboration, Three Words for Goodbye.
Yes,
Heather?
and I thank you, Vanna. So I'm Heather Webb, and you may not have gotten that reference, Vanna White from Wheel of Fortune. No,
No, but I went with it anyway.
You're so good. All right. So I'm Heather Webb. I'm Hazel's book wife. For those of you who didn't know, we have co-written 3 novels together. This is our third, Three Words for Goodbye. I've also written solo novels, and I'm a USA Today international bestseller as well. And we're excited to be here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to let you guys know that, first of all, we are happy to take questions. I'll be keeping an eye out for those in the comments. So if you see me look down at my trusty iPad, that's what's going on. But also there's a comment that's in there now at the top of the responses with some links to purchase the book if you haven't bought it yet. It's wonderful. I know a lot of people are really excited about it in the group. I saw a lot of comments and chatter earlier. But if you haven't bought it yet, you can go ahead and pick up your copy. But perhaps as maybe a little bit of a teaser, we should tell people a bit about what they can expect when they pick the book up. So I don't know which of you starts your book pitch to readers, but I'll leave it up to you to decide.
It's all you know what, we just jump in wherever.
We Excellent. Just take it in turns. Is it my turn? I think it might be my turn to do this one. So, Three Words for Goodbye is really it's a story of, it's a coming of age tale really of two sisters who do not get along, and who are sent to Europe from their home in New York on behalf of their grandmother, who, let's just say, has some loose ends to tie up in 3 amazing European cities, Paris, Venice, and Vienna. And Violet, the grandmother, asks her 2 dear granddaughters, Clara and Madeline, to go to Europe on her behalf. And really, we've been quite cruel because we've put these 2 sisters who don't get along, first of all, on the Queen Mary, the famous steamliner, and so they can't really escape each other. So really, it's about how leaving home is often the best way to discover about yourself, to really figure out what's important in life. And these 2 sisters have their own separate journey to go on, but have this journey to complete together. So we take them through the golden age of travel. This is set just really on the precipice of the Second World War. So 2 young women traveling alone through Europe on the cusp of war seemed like a brilliant setting for lots of drama and tension, and for us to develop this fun sort of narrative between the 2 sisters and among the people they meet along the way. So we had great fun writing it. And Heather might tell you a little bit about somebody else who inspired this journey story, and sort of shows up in a few spots in the book as a cameo role.
Yeah, so everything Hazel said, plus our inspiration. We happened across an article that was about Nellie Bly. And for those of you who are not familiar with her, she was what they called a stunt journalist. In other words, she would go undercover sometimes to write an expose and blow open something like human trafficking or selling babies on the black market, or she ended up getting herself committed to an asylum in New York City so that she could document everything and then write an expose for New York World newspaper, which changed healthcare for women at that time. It was a huge thing. So we loved her. We read this stuff about her and thought she's incredible. But a lot of people know, anyone who knows about Nellie knows about the Madhouse stint, and we really wanted to kind of dig into a different piece. And so when we happened across this article about her doing a trip around the world, we said, oh, yes, please, we are there. So we looked into that. And so she actually wanted to beat the fictional record, Jules Verne's book, 80 Days Around the World. She wanted to beat that record. And a lot of men actually at the time were talking about doing it as well. And they thought, no woman could do this. This is not for a female. Her editor was not going to fight with her and said, Nellie, make it happen. So she did. She packed one bag. She wore one dress, believe it or not, and then took off and did, not planes, trains, and automobiles, but she did do trains and lots of different boats and so on. Mm-hmm. She went on a hot air balloon ride, etc. And she came back to the US within 72 days. So she did break the record. Initially, we thought we were going to write this journey, but as we dug into her own writings about it, unfortunately, she's not really experiencing the places because she is racing. So she's going from one port to another. And that's not really the story we were wanting to expose. So we thought, how about we create the person who guessed how long it took her to get around the world, which was a thing. They ran a contest in the newspaper and they gave a person a free trip to Europe who guessed the correct time. And so our grandmother who opens the story, Violet, guessed the correct answer and was sent on this trip to Europe. Her granddaughters, she believes, who are estranged, need to follow in her footsteps and complete a journey that she never finished, delivering 3 letters, as Hazel said. And family secrets are exposed along the way. So Nellie does come up. She's one of our main characters, Madeline, wants to be a journalist. And she is a journalist. She's had a few small things published, but she loves Nellie and she keeps a scrapbook. And you get to see little snippets of Nellie Bly's articles, and she does make a few cameos. So she's still in the book. She absolutely inspired the story. And Hazel and I kind of love her. So we hope you do.
Well, you guys are obviously pros, because my next question was going to be about the inspiration behind the book. And she is such a dominant sort of figure in the background for different reasons for these 2 characters, that I'm not surprised that the original inspiration for the story came from her trip around the world. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about those 2 sisters. And I know you mentioned the sister who's a journalist, Madeline. Maddie, and then her sister as well, who's very different from her. So I don't know if who you'd like to talk about first, but maybe get a sense of who these people are.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's read our other 2 co-written books won't be surprised to discover 2 main characters. And we found as a writing technique, it works. When there's 2 people co-authoring a book. And we've done a male-female relationship in Last Christmas in Paris and then in Meet Me in Monaco. So we, having been inspired by Nellie and sort of this powerful independent woman who was sort of going against all the norms of society in her era, we were really drawn to write a story about sisters and about that dynamic and that relationship and how unique the sisters' relationship is, and particularly when you put those sisters in 1937, when women weren't really supposed to do very much, or they weren't given many opportunities, and certainly not to travel and have huge experiences. So we created 2 very different sisters. So Madeline is much more ambitious. She's much more brave, let's say, in what she's prepared to do in life. Very casual, sort of, let's try this, a lot more impulsive. And she aspires to be a journalist. So again, the connection back to Nellie Bly and that role that Nellie has fictionally in this family we've created. The counterpoint to that is Clara, who is terribly aware of her sense of self and her position in society and what is appropriate for a young lady of her standing to do and not to do. Very cautious, very strict about what the travel itinerary is going to be, which Madeline cannot stand. And Clara, we meet her on the cusp of a wedding to a society millionaire, and it's really about how Clara discovers that, okay, maybe that's not what I'm supposed to do with my life. She has a love of art, so she's really drawn. They're both drawn creatively to different things. One with words, one with imagery, which again we play on quite a lot in the book. So they're very, very different characters, but as we often find, they have an awful lot more in common than they might think, and that we as readers discover as we throw all sorts of jeopardy and interesting characters their way, and we slowly start to see them both change and adapt into new versions of themselves, which was great fun.
I'm laughing because one of my favorite tropes in historical fiction in particular is the man who's with one of the heroines at the beginning of the book, and you sit there and you think, are you going to be around by the end of this book? Because often there is that journey. Yeah, exactly. There is that journey of figuring out yourself, and both of these women have to sort of learn that there are wonderful things about them, and whether that's the impulsiveness or the sort of more careful, considered side. But also there are things that they do need to sort of bend on and learn to sort of accept about the other. And I think that that's being a sister myself and being an older sister, I think I can relate to some of Clara's kind of pulling things together and keeping everybody in line and trying to make sure that sort of things are moving on time. And my younger sister is wonderful, but I could certainly see elements of that. So I don't know if either of you are sisters yourselves. But yeah, I think it shows through in the story.
We both are, yeah. And I'm the younger sister, Heather's the older sister. So we've definitely drawn on a lot of our own experience, I think, of what comes with being a sister, and that infuriating connection that sometimes drives you mad, but you love them anyway.
You do,
family ties. So yeah,
we really loved this idea of the complexity of a sibling relationship. Our first two books together, we wrote romance, essentially. I mean, it's historical, but there's a romantic relationship that unfolds. And while there is some romance in this book, we really wanted to sort of hone in on what it's like to be so different from someone you're related to, who you love, but you have so much trouble learning to accept and forgiving them. And so that was part of what we wanted to explore in the book.
It feels
and
like
it's about them pushing each other as well. I think they challenge each other along the way. At the beginning, I suppose they're trying to make the other person bend more to their way of doing things, but as often happens, they realize that the best version of that sister is not the person that's going to be more like them, but more like they're supposed to be. And I think particularly in that setting it in that era where there were so many confines for women, and you were supposed to do certain things. And I love that you picked up on that sort of trope of what's going to happen to the guy, because at that time, what was supposed to happen to the guy was you were supposed to marry him, and everyone lives happily ever after. And I guess it's a trope because that's what happened so often. So I think it's really interesting when you create characters who push aside the expectations of their era, and with the sort of benefit of hindsight, I hope we're all rooting for them, to be going, you don't have to marry him, you don't have to do that, you don't have to have that
you have
classic
choice.
situation.
You have choices.
You have agency. Yeah.
I think it's interesting in this book. There were two sort of big themes along with sisterhood that I felt continued to come out at me. One of which was trust, and one of also was forgiveness, and this idea of sort of asking for forgiveness and then also giving forgiveness and closure. And that comes both through the sisters' relationship, but also as this process as they deliver these letters to these significant figures in their grandmother's life. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of bringing those elements out and how you show that as an author on the page, as opposed to saying so and so asked for the forgiveness of, it's that tension between show and tell, I think, that sometimes can be difficult to describe, but I'm going to ask you to do it anyway.
I think that's kind of a tough question, because sometimes I think authors set out to do something else. And then through the character's journey on the page, these themes emerge. I don't think Hazel and I mean, I'm speaking for you, Hazel, but I did not sit down thinking this book is going to be about forgiveness. We sat down thinking we want, it's a pandemic. We want beautiful, lush locations. We want travel. We want family together, not separate and alone. We wanted that to explore that interwar period that doesn't get a lot of play in books, where you could feel the rumbling sort of through Europe and in the US sort of coming on, all that premonitory stuff. So we set out to do that, and in the process of writing the grandmother Violet's letters to these people that she wanted to say goodbye to, all of a sudden there was this forgiveness element. So in terms of the show versus tell, I mean, you obviously kind of demonstrate through how the sisters change on the page over time, that they have learned to forgive. Madeline is everything Clara cannot deal with. She's got horrible clothing. She's brash. She makes these terrible decisions sometimes. She's looking for danger. I mean, she's kind of a mess in a lot of ways, but Clara forgives her for her faults and also learns to accept and love these parts of her by the end, because that sense of adventure inspires her own arc, her own change. And so, yeah, I mean, that's sort of a nebulous answer, but I think I personally did not sit down to write a book about forgiveness. I feel like it's sort of, and I think a lot of
I did. I just didn't tell you.
How clever of you.
That was always my plan. It was always my plan. I snuck it in there. No, I think it's the perfect answer in a way, because I think often, and this is what's so amazing about when a book is released and it's in readers' hands, and I think every reader takes something slightly different from a book. It's classic art, isn't it? We all see something different in that painting. Something resonates with us. And I think whatever it is we're supposed to learn from reading a particular book or being in a theatre or seeing a piece of art, we will take that from that experience. And I love that. I love the fluidity of readers' reactions to books, and I think it's a real joy as an author to hear that. I think possibly that degree of forgiveness and trust that you so beautifully picked out of this story possibly comes through the use of the device of letters, if you like, that the sisters learn a lot about their grandmother. We don't often know our grandparents that intimately, do we? We sort of see them as a figurehead, and we don't think about them as younger people. We think about them as grandparents they are.
Too. Even our own parents.
Absolutely. You forget, that they didn't live in black and white just because all the photographs we have of them are in black and white. They lived in full colour. And I'm sure they swore and smoked and drank whiskey. And, we wanted to, I suppose, let Clara and Madeline understand more about their grandmother through the forgiveness that she is finally able to sort of forgiving herself as much as anybody else in her life, and that they get given a little sort of an instruction letter of their own with each time they deliver a letter. So they're getting to understand what their grandmother's life was, and that really makes them stop and think. And through that, I think there's this sense of, okay, there is a bigger thing going on here than just you wearing awful clothes and you wanting to run away with a millionaire. You know, there's more at stake here, and that sort of fluidity of being away from home. Often everything's up in the air, so everything can land in a different way. So it was really lovely to write those letters from Violet and step into that grandmother's head, but as a young woman with full of passion and life and adventure, you know. And she opens the book, and actually the audiobook is narrated. It gives me goosebumps. The narrator who reads Violet in the prologue,
she's so good.
It's haunting. I got goosebumps now thinking about it. You can just hear this woman at the end of her life, so full of the life that she's had, and it's amazing. Yeah.
It's funny too that when they sent us over the list of narrators, I mean, there were maybe 7 or 8, and Hazel and I separately picked exactly the same 3.
That's interesting.
She said, I'm not going to tell you which ones I picked. You tell me. And so I went through and I said, this for this person, this for this person. She's like, oh my God. The last one, she said, you picked this, didn't you? I said, yes. So we actually picked and they felt like those characters. They really embodied them. So they did a great job.
Yeah, they really did.
You're obviously a writing team for a reason, which I want to get back to. But I'm also curious about something you said about sort of traveling and being out of your comfort zone and finding yourself. I think also one of the things that's really interesting is you have your characters traveling during a particularly unstable time in the world. We're not quite to World War II yet, but we as the reader know it's coming. But there's also all of these rumblings throughout the book where even if you don't have the benefit of our hindsight, you know that there's something going on with the rise of fascism, and Madeline is of course fascinated by this and is interested in writing articles and starts to really explore this. Why was that so important to you to set this book during this particular time and not, say, 10 or 15 years before that?
We actually played with a couple of different time periods, and we found that there were a few things happening that really worked well in terms of this interwar period. One was, it's kind of a golden age of travel. You know, you have the Queen Mary, you have the Orient Express, you have the Hindenburg. So there's a lot more options in terms of travel. We wanted to explore those options. So that was one of the main reasons. And then another was that we didn't want to get into World War II because then the book becomes something really different. We just wanted to look at, you know, sort of, it gave Madeline a lot of fodder for her potential news articles that she could research and write. So, so we loved that aspect too, without putting them right in the middle of the war. Because we knew we wanted to make this, I wouldn't say a lighter book, but certainly lighter than a war book. You know, that's just a really different feel. So those were a couple of the most important aspects of setting it during this time. And then the third was just that we were intrigued by it. We thought, what was going on? I mean, yes, there was the Great Depression in the US, and I think there was a bit of that happening worldwide too. But what else? What's going on with that? And so we learned a lot about what was happening then, and that was really fascinating. And so that was the third factor, I think.
We have actually a question about what kind of research did you do for this book, and what was your favorite information that you found, which feels like it goes nicely with the conversation about this particular time period.
Yeah,
we did. We read a lot about Nellie Bly initially, I think, because, you know, this sort of started with her journey around the world, and, you know, it was such a spark, I suppose, that sense of leaving home. And when we found out actually that not only did Nellie take this amazing globe-trotting trip around the world alone, but when we discovered that the newspaper she worked for ran a guessing competition, and there were literally thousands and thousands and thousands of entries of people trying to guess her exact arrival time back in America. And when we realized that whoever guessed won this competition to go to Europe, this opened up a a thread of connections from our real person from history to, here's our fictional connection to her. And that was really fascinating then, to explore what forms of, how do we get, a lot of it was about how do we get our sisters from A to B to C to D to E. So you spend a lot of time, which was great fun, researching what were the modes of transport available at this time. How long did it take to get from Paris to Venice on the Orient Express? So you end up spending a lot of time in sort of timetables and logistics, and then obviously researching the intricacies of each of those famous modes of transport, because obviously the reader is, we hope, wanting to go into the Queen Mary and see what that's like. What is it like on the Orient Express? What was it like to step on board the Hindenburg? And we actually, funnily again, how our brain works the same way, we independently of each other both found a book about the history of travel, which had the history of flight, of hot air balloons, of steamships, of trains. So the travel aspect was quite a big part of it. And then obviously getting into that, the rise of fascism, understanding what was happening in Italy with Mussolini, what was happening in and around people like Clara and Madeline, who were really going about their business, quite naive in a way, because they'd come from America where, this was all happening way over in Europe. So to suddenly find yourself in and around cafes and society where there are clearly disturbances and rough, rumblings of something happening, and how do you react and respond to that? So yeah, there was a lot of reading around what happened building up to the war, as Heather said, without this becoming a book about the war. So a lot of understanding what was leading up to these events, so that we can then bring our sisters into that scenario authentically on the page.
We've also both traveled extensively in Europe, so we have a real sense of what that would look like, what it would be like, what the museums and the monuments are like. We obviously didn't when we were actually writing this, because no one could travel, but just before we shut down, the world lockdown, I actually took a trip out to Blackwell Island as well, which is the asylum where Nellie got herself committed. I mean, that's the island, the name of the island, which has now been renamed to Roosevelt Island. And I just thought, I want to see what that's like. And that was a really bizarre, it's this little pocket.
Strange place.
Have you been there?
Accidentally. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
I was on a bus that went there rather than going in a different direction, and I thought, I don't want to be here.
Yeah. I took this tram. I took this tram over the water in Midtown and landed, and there's like 5 cars on the whole island, and then it's super quiet, but it looks like Manhattan. And then there's all these plaques with the historical stuff, and I went down to see where the asylum was. It's no longer there, obviously, but what a strange, it's funny you said that was my first thought, was this place is creepy, and I
found it unsettling.
It is very unsettling. And I think they're trying to, all these real estate agents are trying to advertise to people who want to move to New York. I mean, honestly, it's right beside it. They can't get people to move there. I think it's they get there and they're like, it's nice looking, but it's very unsettling. I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah,
doesn't sound like somewhere you'd wish.
No, very weird history with the islands in the East River in New York that is fascinating and merits a book all of its own.
But they're going to be putting a gorgeous monument. Hazel and I found in our research, they're going to put a gorgeous monument there to Nellie.
Interesting.
They're working,
which is long overdue, isn't it? I mean, gosh, I can't believe it's taken this long to recognize her impact on mental health reform and so many other trailblazing things that she did. So she was a real force of nature. So yeah, it was really interesting to find out more about her than perhaps her best well-known stunt, if you like,
Sure.
for want of a better word, at Blackwell's Island. And we've also, Heather and I, pre-pandemic times, have also travelled a lot in Europe. So we've both been to Paris. I spent a fabulous time in Venice a long, long time ago. So got out all the old photographs and old travel guides, and of course, we're very lucky now. There's Google Maps at your disposal. There's virtual tours of things. So we were able to travel to these places without actually doing what we would have loved to do, and have a co-writing trip to every place we've written about. But another time.
Well, not a big surprise. You are getting a lot of questions about the co-writing process. So if you don't mind, I'm sure you've answered some of these several times before, but if you don't mind.
How fascinating, isn't it?
No.
Well, I think people are really interested in sort of how does that, and I know as an author myself, I'm interested in it because it's, writing can be a very solo activity, and it can be something that feels very all-consuming, and then opening up to another person, I'm sure, is challenging, but can also be really rewarding when you find the right person. And we had Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray on a couple weeks ago, and they talked about their process, but I'm guessing that every writing team is different. So perhaps if you could tell.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I said it seems that that's true. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, so if you don't mind kind of going back to your origin story and talking a little bit about how you guys got together in the first place, I think people would be really curious to hear that.
Well,
yeah. Do you want to do the first bit?
I'll start and you jump in, Hazel. Yeah. So we have the same literary agent, and we had debuts released a month apart. So she introduced us just to, have a friend in the field, who's out there trying to learn how to launch books and write books. And Hazel and I took to each other really well quickly. I think we worked on Fall of Poppies, which is a World War I set anthology. There are 9 authors that worked on it. And I actually put together a mini tour just because why not? It's fun to do events with other authors. And so Hazel flew over from Ireland and she brought presents, and I loved her immediately. Yeah, that was kind of our
it was that easy.
Yeah, that was kind of our start. And then she was interested in, we were both really interested in exploring World War I a bit more. And Hazel said, I'd love to write a Christmas book. What do you think? And we kind of hashed out an idea, and we had no idea how it was going to go. That was Last Christmas in Paris. That was our first book together. We really didn't know. It was a kind of a leap of faith. And it's funny, our agent went to us individually and said, how was it? Did it work out all right?
You still friends?
Yeah. And I said, I loved it. It was so much fun. We're actually talking about doing another one. She's like, great. So
wonderful.
Yeah. And so
it was great. I think, I think people often assume that we were the sort of best friends before we embarked on this co-writing career, and we did it totally the other way around. And I think it's possibly the best and maybe only way to do it in some ways, because we approached this from we were excited to write a book together, and we obviously met and knew we were going to get along. And then we've just sort of that friendship has just developed, and we've a lot in common. We've very similar sort of family backgrounds, and obviously both historical nerds. So we both like a glass of wine. So we were always going to get along, I think. But creatively, there is an enormous amount of trust that you are placing in somebody else. And as you say, writing by its nature is a very solitary process, and it's a very emotional process. I mean, you're putting an awful lot of yourself in a book, what you believe, what you hope, through your characters, and to invite somebody else in to write part of that story, it really is a big leap of faith. And, we often talk about you have to leave the ego at the door. You've got to be prepared to take on board other advice, suggestions, be flexible, adapt. And, we've really learned a lot from each other. And often we're writing a solo book of our own at the same time that we're co-writing, and we bounce ideas off each other, and we support each other, we cheer each other on, we cheer each other up. And So it's become a fabulous sort of creative relationship as well, that allows us to be really honest about what's working, what's not. And you really need that, writing, actually the process of words on page, there's only really one person at a time can do that. But I think you can collaborate with other creative people to strengthen what you're doing. And I think I'd always encourage other writers, don't be afraid to invite other people in, ask their advice, don't shield what you're doing. The more people really bounce ideas off, the stronger your work's going to become. So yeah, it's really been an unexpected journey, hasn't it, to both of our careers? And yeah,
I think
long
too,
may it last.
What's so great about it too is that, it's awesome getting those highs in the industry. There's a lot of lows with rejection, or maybe something didn't sell the way you hoped, or other things that happen. But the highs are so wonderful when you can share it with someone. It's just like anything else in life, if you're loving traveling somewhere, you want to share those moments with someone, right? Even if a friend or a lover or husband, whatever. But it's been really, really fun to be able to ping Hazel and be like, yes, that's our 14th country to solve this book. Because when it's yourself, you're like, oh, okay, that's it.
Now I have to explain this to somebody else, and it's not going to be quite the same thing. Yeah.
It's not. It's really so fun to celebrate together. And if things aren't going to plan, it's also great to know that you have someone to sort of brainstorm with and work through those troublesome spots or whatever it happens to be. So yeah, that's been really great. I that's probably for me, and I think probably for Hazel too, been one of the best parts of this whole thing.
Yeah, to be able to co-shriek about exciting news, it's really, really important. And it's interesting, we often get asked, does one of you come up with the ideas and the other person actually does the writing? And I'm always fascinated to hear how other people do it. For us, it's true partnership. We come up with the ideas together, we sort of brainstorm a rough synopsis, we think about characters, we, as I say, tend to take initially a character each to develop their story. We alternate chapters, so we will be writing, if you like, a linear book from beginning to end, chapter at a time, character point of view at a time. But equally weighted. It's a real 50-50. There's no sort of, I sit in the corner and open the champagne while Heather cracks on with the hard work. We fully write the whole book together, and we co-edit each other's characters, point of view, pages. It's a true collaboration, and I think that's the only way for us it could ever be a Hazel Gaynor Heather Webb book.
I think there's sort of a magical thing too that happens where when I'm just having a rough time with either a particular section or something in my life, Hazel just I don't even necessarily have to say it. It's like she intuitively fills in these spaces, and I think I do that for her too. And this is that whole, we're two people with a shared brain when we work together in a lot of ways. It's really, especially by book 3, we have to work to not sound like each other, I think.
So you're trying to preserve some character voice, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because we actually do have a question from Anissa. Has your joint writing process changed from book 1 to book 3? So you mentioned, you know each other so well at this point, and you know each other's writing so well. What do you think is different about the process?
I think the process, actually, in terms of the functional process, is pretty much the same. I mean, we work on a Google Docs, initially drafting, which is a sort of a live organic document that you can literally see each other working in it. And then you sort of go, oops, Heather's already in it, I'll go make a cup of tea. So that has never changed. I think we're far less polite with each other now than we were at the beginning. We were sort of finding our way around each other, weren't we? We're a lot more shut up, that's nonsense now. So it's
Yeah, I was like,
We get to-
oh, I think this could be a little blah, blah, blah. Now we're like, no, that's not working.
It's not working. We're throwing it out.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're much more efficient now, aren't we?
We are. Yeah.
How do you
But
find?
yeah, I think that sort of,
Go ahead.
sorry. No, I was just going to say the process of getting the story down. I suppose we just went with that. Google Docs, you write one character, I'll write the other. We'll ultimately edit the whole thing. It works, and so for us, it's a process of getting the story told. It's good so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that the collaboration has influenced how you go about writing your solo books? Because you both have wonderful careers, as you said at the beginning, with longevity behind those careers. How has that come into play?
I think
I plot a bit more.
Mm.
Yeah,
She's warned you a bit.
Yeah, I'm a bit more of a plotter than Hazel, I think. I like to know sort of what, I don't have to know everything, but I like to see sort of where we're going to end up, and then how we get there, I'm mostly okay with. But yeah, a lot of times we'll start on something. I'll be like, okay, I need to figure out where we're headed. And so we'll chat. Luckily, again, this flexibility thing. I mean, I trust Hazel's instincts, so that when we don't have something figured out and she's like, you know what, let's just write through this part and we'll pick it apart and figure out how it's going to work. So I have learned to actually do the opposite. I do a lot more pantsing than I used to. I just sort of trusting the emotional thread that I'm writing, instead of worrying so much about, how the plot works out or whatever. I'm a freelance editor too, so I tend to think like that a bit. So this has actually been great for me to learn how to let some of that go and just go with things.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I've learned a lot from Heather as well about, Heather's so brilliant at really drilling into characters' motivations. And, I can write a lovely piece of prose and Heather's like, yeah, but what happens?
Why?
Why is she doing that? And it's like, but it doesn't matter because it sounds pretty. She's like, no. Why are they doing that? What's the motivation? Where's the, and Heather's brilliant at sort of looking for, where's the tension? Where's the drama?
Who's the bad guy?
She's really brilliant at who's the antagonist here. We don't have an antagonist. So she's really made me look at that more in my own writing. I definitely find myself with a Heather on my shoulder going, who's the bad guy? What's happening? Where's the drama? So she's taught me a lot.
And the emotional depth that Hazel brings is something that I think about in my own writing too. I feel my emotions are very close to the surface, so I need less to get me to an emotional spot. Like Hazel writes stuff that makes me cry all the time or laugh, whatever, and she's like, "Girl, you're so soft." And I am. And so the negative of that as a writer is that I don't need as much on the page, but a lot of readers do. And so I've learned this from Hazel, where I need to add a little bit more here. I need to go a little bit deeper there. I need to, I need to round out this section more by adding, this other shade of emotion. She's very, very good at that. So that's something I've definitely been working at bringing to my solo stuff too.
Where are the tears, Heather? Make me cry.
Oh God. She's like, are you crying again?
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Good tears. Good tears.
We have a question from Maria. Will you both be getting together soon in person to write your next book? So I know you mentioned that you weren't able to be together during the pandemic, and you do mention it also in your author note as well, which I'm sure was a big change and difficult if that's part of your process. And then also just the fact that you enjoy each other's company, obviously. When things open up, when we're able to do this again, do you think that another in-person writing session is in the cards?
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. God, I plan to be in Ireland. If all goes well, it looks like I'm going to be doing a writing retreat as sort of the workshop leader in Ireland next July. If all goes well. So at the very least, I plan to show up on Hazel's doorstep for a few days.
Whether you like it or not, Hazel.
Absolutely. Yeah. She'll just turn up with a bag. She'll be like Nellie Bly with one case and one dress.
Yep.
I come to say.
We don't know what book 4 is yet, or if there is a book 4, but I will say that we are constantly plotting. We have already pinged each other a little bit. So right now we're just saying, we'll see, to be continued.
There's some ideas brewing, maybe.
There are, and I think it's not that you ever want to turn that off. And we're crazy. We've both just come out of, sort of finishing this book and releasing it. And Heather's been working on her next solo book, The Last Ship Home, which is out next February. And I'm in the middle of drafting my next book. And yet we find each other. Here it is, gorgeous book. And yet we find we're pinging each other saying, what if we were to do this? So it's that creative spark is always there, isn't it? And it's dangerous when you've got somebody like each other to go, I've had an idea. It's like, stop it.
I thought we were tired. I thought we were too burned out. No,
we were taking a week off. No, we're not.
It's fun too that it gives us, we have a couple of outlets. We have our solo projects, and then our collaborations to me feel like fun. And so I think that's really great. I think in a difficult industry and in a demanding career, it's great to have this thing that's just really for fun, that you don't have to do, that you enjoy, and just really adds to your platform. And apparently readers are loving them too, which we of course love to hear. So
it's been a lot of very, very positive response on this chat already. So
great.
Thank you.
People are really enjoying it. They also enjoy you guys making them cry. So
good bonus. We can do that.
Exactly. Well, we've got a few more minutes, and I want to make sure that I get a chance to ask you about books that you've been reading and enjoying, and anything that you'd like to recommend, because I know that being an author means also being a reader as well. So anyone in particular want to do the first round of recommendations?
Well, I'll start, because Heather, could you hold that book up that you just showed us a few minutes ago, please? Yeah.
She's like the best salesperson. I'm going to
get it up there. There you go. The next ship. There we are. So this is Heather's next book, coming out in February, and it's again a gorgeous historical novel set around Ellis Island. It's really an immigrant story, and Heather, as you won't be surprised, having listened to this conversation, just has created these incredibly real, dynamic women who endure all sorts of struggles in their life. It's such a fascinating period of American history, and I didn't know much about it, so for me it was really interesting to read. I didn't know much about Ellis Island at all, and it feels really sort of relevant to today with everything that's happening in the world today. So it's a really meaty historical read, and I think people will hugely enjoy it. They will be moved, and they'll learn an awful lot from it as well. So coming next February, and I also want to hold this up because this is Julia's next book.
You got yours too.
Yes. So this is the last dance of the debutante, and I'm just starting to read this. I love Julia's writing. She writes beautifully, and this is set in a fascinating era. We were talking earlier. We haven't really had much fiction set in the post-Second World War, and this is about the last debutantes that were presented to Queen Elizabeth II. So I think this is just such a fascinating premise, a fascinating period of history, and I can't wait to dig in. And I think it's going to appeal to a lot of readers who have loved watching The Crown and are just fascinated with that whole glamour of the court, and what it was like for women at that turning point, a real social shift, wasn't there? So yeah, so there's mine.
Well, I'm going to bring you along to all my interviews in December when this book comes out, because you're going to be far better at pitching this than I am already. So.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm actually just about finished with it's an audiobook, and I'm sorry it's hard to read, but The Last Letter from Your Lover by Jojo Moyes. It's hard to see, but anyway, they just made a movie about it on Netflix with Shailene, is it Woods, her last name? I love her. She's been in Big Little Lies and a bunch of other stuff. But and I'm loving it. It's told in a bunch of different time periods, and of course the last letter, someone has gone missing or something has happened between these lovers. One person's married. There's lots of intrigue. It's a beautiful book, and I'm almost done. I listened to it. I drove home from North Carolina. I was on a trip with my kids and my parents yesterday, and I listened to it the 9 hours on the way home. My kids were like, "Mom, that book." Like, put in your earbuds.
You're fine.
I still have a couple of hours left, but I'm getting to the end there, and it's been a great read. So that's what I'm reading.
Oh, I'll have to check that out, and I'll have to check it out on Netflix too.
Yeah, I'm not letting myself watch it until I finish this. So
no, you got to read the book first.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I read that book. Well, it's quite a few years now. Maybe is it about 6 or 7 years old? It was just the book she wrote before Me Before You broke her out enormously all around the world, and it's a beautiful book. So I'm fascinated to see what they do with and it's Felicity Jones, isn't it? She's in it as well, and I love her. So I'm fascinated to see what they do. I'm always slightly worried about watching an adaptation when you've
I
actually have The Last Letter from Your Lover is somewhere on the shelf
in the
over
back.
here, signed by, it's up there. It's just, hang on, I can't get my finger to go across. It's there it is. There it is. Signed by Jojo, and so I'm slightly nervous about watching the movie adaptation, but I saw the trailer and it looks beautiful, and we will all cry. So, yeah.
I'm sure. Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm excited about all of these books. I would love to make sure that we have a few minutes to tell people where, first of all, they can get the book, and then also where they can follow you guys online for new releases and any other news that comes up.
So the book is available anywhere books are sold. If it's not carried in your local independent shop, you can order it with your bookseller. And then of course Barnes and Noble and Amazon, and I think Kobo and Apple Books. You know how it is these days with ebooks, you can find them in a lot of places. So anywhere books are sold. And then I am on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm Ms. Heather Webb, so MS Heather Webb. The best way to keep up with me is through my monthly newsletter. I do a lot of articles that are related to the books that I'm working on in terms of fun research facts and writerly stuff. And I host a giveaway every month. And that can also be found on my website at heatherwebb.net.
Wonderful.
And I'm quite straightforward as well. So I'm just Hazel Gaynor I spend far too much time on Twitter, so you'll probably find me there talking nonsense. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm Hazel Gaynor Books, and my website is hazelgaynor.com, and I also have a newsletter. So if you just fill in the little subscription form, I don't need to know anything about your life. It's just a form. And then I'm not quite so good as Heather. I can't promise to send a newsletter every month. Sometimes a couple of months slips by. But I tend to do subscriber giveaways and exclusive cover reveals and sort of sneak peeks.
Important news.
Behind the scene, important things. Yeah. And special announcements of, reduced price ebook deals and things like that. So you'll find me there. And I should probably say that 3 Words for Goodbye is coming to UK and Ireland in September. So it's not in the bookshops here just yet. But it's available to pre-order, and again, if you can do that through your local independent bookshop, they'd be incredibly grateful for your business at the moment. So yeah, a couple of weeks more and it'll be available this side of the pond as well.
I also have a stack of signed book plates still that Hazel and I both signed. If you would like one, please email me, and again, right through my website, and I'm happy to send you one.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. Thank you everybody for watching as well. It's been a fantastic conversation, and I always enjoy speaking about books with you, Hazel. I know you've been on before, and Heather, it was wonderful to have you on for the first time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you guys, and we'll see you again next week.
Happy
Bye.
reading. Bye.